There are some historical mysteries that may never be solved, from the exact date that Jesus was born to the true identity of Jack the Ripper. Sometimes, that's because the key discoveries have been lost or an archaeological site has been totally destroyed. Other times, it's because new evidence is unlikely to ever appear, or the remaining clues are too unclear to lead scholars to a solid conclusion. The lack of answers only makes these mysteries even more fascinating. And today, we'll look at the 15 greatest historical mysteries still unsolved. So, let's start off with Number 15, the Tarim mummies. These ancient mummies are exactly the kind of discovery that makes history feel far too neat. In China's Xinjiang region, deep inside the brutal Tarim Basin, archaeologists began finding bodies that looked almost untouched by time. The dry alkaline sand had preserved skin, hair, clothing, eyelashes, and even braids. Some of these mummies date back nearly 4,000 years, including the famous Beauty of Lulan, buried around 1900 BC with a wool cloak, felt hat, leather boots, a comb, a basket, and grain for the afterlife. But what shocked experts most was their look and culture. Many had reddish or light brown hair, long noses, and clothing woven in plaid and twill patterns usually linked to Bronze Age Europe. Their graves also held wheat from the west, millet from the east, and ancient cheese. DNA later showed links to Western Eurasian populations. That whole mix still feels impossible today. So the question remains, how early did East and West meet? Number 14, the Phantom Zeno Map. The Zeno Map is the kind of document that looks like history and trouble at the same time. Published in Venice in 1558 by Niccolo Zeno, it claimed to be based on old letters from his ancestors, Niccolo and Antonio Zeno, who supposedly sailed the North Atlantic in the late 1300s. The story says they served a mysterious prince named Zikni and traveled around Greenland, Iceland, the Faroe region, and possibly lands west of the Atlantic. That would place Venetian exploration nearly a century before the legendary Columbus. The map shows Greenland in a strangely convincing position, but it also includes phantom islands like Frisland, Ikaria, and Estotiland, places no modern map can confirm. Some believe it preserves echoes of Norse knowledge or forgotten voyages. But there are some experts who think Zeno copied Portuguese charts and sagas to boost family prestige. Unfortunately, the original documents are gone, so the map remains trapped between fraud, memory, and maybe a lost mythical Atlantic story. Number 13. The Hopi Ant People Legend. Some legends sound mythical until you realize they may be carrying memories of real survival. Among the Hopi people of the American Southwest, one of the strangest traditions is the story of the Ant People, known as Anu Sinom. Hopi oral history says humanity has lived through several worlds, each destroyed by catastrophe. One ended in fire, another in ice, and another in a great flood. During these disasters, the ant people supposedly sheltered human survivors underground, feeding them, protecting them, and teaching them how to store food and sprout seeds. Their name suggests beings with ant-like qualities, cooperative, hard-working, and able to live beneath the earth. The story connects naturally to Hopi ideas of emergence, underground ceremonial kivas, and the sipapu, the symbolic place where people came into this world. No archaeological proof confirms the ant people exactly as described, but the legend remains powerful. It sits between myth, memory, and a possible ancient lesson about survival. Even today. Number 12. The Utsuro-bune Mystery Vessel. Japan in 1803 was not a place where strange foreign arrivals went unnoticed. Under the Sakoku policy, outside contact was heavily restricted, which makes the Utsuro-bune story even stranger. Villagers in Hitachi Province, which is now Ibaraki Prefecture, reportedly saw a round hollow vessel drift ashore. Edo period accounts describe it as about 3 to 5 meters high, over 5 meters wide, with a metal plated lower half and glass or crystal windows above. Inside was a young woman, around 20 years old, with pale skin, reddish or light hair, unfamiliar clothing, and a small box she refused to let anyone touch. She spoke a language no one understood, and strange symbols covered the craft. Some people think she was a foreign castaway from Russia or another distant coast. Others see the story as folklore or an early UFO-like legend. Most versions say villagers pushed her vessel back into the sea, leaving her fate completely unknown. Number 11. The Lost Ark of the Covenant. Few lost objects carry more weight than the Ark of the Covenant. According to biblical tradition, it held the stone tablets of the 10 Commandments, Aaron's rod, and a pot of manna. But it was more than a sacred chest. It was believed to be the earthly dwelling place of God's presence, carried into battle and kept at the center of Israelite worship. The Ark later rested in Solomon's temple in Jerusalem, then disappeared from history before or during the Babylonian destruction of the city in 587 BC. Temple treasures were recorded as taken to Babylon, but the Ark is never named. Some traditions say priests hid it beneath the Temple Mount or near Mount Nebo. Others claim it rests in Ethiopia, guarded inside the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion in Axum. Well, no outsider has verified that claim. So the Ark remains trapped between faith, history, and one missing object that no one can prove survived. But let's be honest. Does this thing actually exist? Number 10. A forgotten Mesoamerican war. Some battles vanish so completely that only the ground remembers them. In western El Salvador, at the Chalchuapa Archaeological Zone, researchers found traces of a violent conflict buried beneath ceremonial centers, pyramidal platforms, and old ritual spaces everywhere. This was not some small forgotten village. Chalchuapa was once a major hub between Maya and Lenca worlds, connected to trade routes carrying obsidian, salt, cacao, jade, and influence. But around the 6th or 7th century AD, something bad happened there. Archaeologists found dense clusters of obsidian projectile points, cut blades, broken bones and skulls, and hurried burials. In one haunting case, more than 30 male skeletons were found together during the construction of a ceremonial mound. Some may have been captives or victims of execution. Fortifications also showed signs of rushed repair, as if people expected another attack. Yet no inscription records the war, no monument names the dead, and no surviving oral memory explains who destroyed them or why. Number 9. Everest's lost 1924 climbers. This mystery begins high on Everest, where even breathing feels like a negotiation. In 1924, British climbers George Mallory and Andrew Sandy Irvine made their final push toward the summit from the north side. Teammate Noel Odell saw them briefly through the clouds on June 8, moving high on the ridge near what he believed was the second step. Then the weather closed in, and both men vanished. If they reached the top, they beat Hillary and Tenzing by almost 30 years. In 1999, Mallory's body was found at 26,760 feet, preserved in the ice, with injuries suggesting a deadly fall. But the key evidence was missing: Irvine's body and the Kodak camera he carried. Mallory had also promised to leave a photo of his wife on the summit, and that photo was not found on him. Until Irvine or the camera is recovered, Everest keeps the answer. Number 8. Was there a real King Arthur? King Arthur feels larger than history, which is exactly the problem. The Shining King of Camelot, Excalibur, Merlin, Lancelot, and the Round Table mostly come from later medieval romance, especially Geoffrey of Monmouth and the writers who followed him. But the possible real Arthur belongs to a darker world, Britain after Rome withdrew in the early 5th century. Saxons, Picts, and Irish raiders pressed in, while local warlords fought to hold the island together. Early Welsh sources mention Arthur as a great warrior, not a king. The 9th century Historia Brittonum calls him a battle leader who fought alongside British kings and won 12 battles, including Mount Badon. Later Welsh annals mention his death at Camlan. But no contemporary inscription or eyewitness account proves he lived. Maybe he was a Romano-British commander. Maybe several leaders became one legend. Or maybe Britain created him because it needed a hero who could never truly die. Number 7. The 3,400-year-old frozen traveler. This girl's grave is quiet, but her life was anything but ordinary. In 1921, archaeologists opened an oak coffin in the Danish village of Egtved and found one of the most remarkable Bronze Age burials in Europe. The body had mostly decomposed in the peat, but her hair, clothes, and belongings survived after 3,400 years. She was around 16 to 18 years old and wore a short wool blouse, a corded skirt, bronze arm rings, and a beautifully decorated bronze belt plate. At her feet lay the cremated remains of a child wrapped in animal skin. For decades, no one knew who she really was. Then isotope testing on her teeth and hair revealed something stunning. She was likely born in southern Germany and traveled repeatedly between there and Denmark during her final 23 months. Her last journey ended only weeks before her death. Was she part of an elite marriage alliance, a ritual traveler, or something even more personal? Now let's move to Number 6. Europe's oldest living language. Some languages feel old, but Euskara feels almost impossible. Spoken by the Basque people in the Western Pyrenees between Spain and France, it does not belong to the Indo-European family that includes Spanish, French, English, Russian, and nearly every other major language in Europe. Linguists call it a language isolate, meaning it has no proven relatives. That alone makes it strange. What makes it even more mind-blowing and amazing is that it survived Rome, the Visigoths, the Moors, and later Spanish and French rule. Its earliest written traces appear only around the 10th century, which is surprisingly late for something that may be far older. Some scholars believe Euskara could be the last living remnant of pre-Indo-European speech in Western Europe. Place names, ancient Dinah studies, and its stubbornly unique grammar all point toward deep roots. But no one can say exactly where it began. It may be Europe's oldest living voice, still speaking from a world we barely understand. Our history is pretty incredible. Number 5. The desert kites. From the ground, they barely look like anything. Just low stone lines crossing dry land. But from above, the desert kites suddenly become enormous traps, stretching across Jordan, Syria, northern Arabia, the Sinai, the Negev, and beyond. Early pilots gave them the name because their long walls and narrow heads looked like children's kites laid across the desert. Some date back to the late Neolithic, while others were reused, repaired, or altered into the Bronze Age and later. The main theory is mass hunting. People may have driven gazelle, onagers, or oryx into wide stone funnels, forcing them toward pens, cliffs, or killing zones. Rock art even shows animals being guided into enclosures. But the scale is hard to ignore. Some kites run for miles, requiring planning, labor, and coordination across whole communities. Many contain no bones at all, while others sit in strange locations. So were they only hunting machines, or ceremonial landscapes that fed both bodies and beliefs? Well, if you know, then drop your theory below. Number 4. Secrets of the Hallstatt burials. High in the Austrian Alps, the quiet village of Hallstatt hides a cemetery that once belonged to one of Europe's richest Iron Age cultures. Between roughly 800 and 500 BC, more than 1,000 people were buried there. And their grave goods tell a bigger story than any written record could. Weapons, bronze jewelry, Baltic amber, Mediterranean coral, Greek pottery, glass beads, and fine metalwork were all found among the dead. The reason for this wealth was salt. Well, yup, salt. Above the village stood one of the oldest worked salt mines in the world, and in ancient times, salt meant survival, preservation, and power. Some graves suggest warriors, others high-status women, and even children buried with valuable items hint at inherited privilege. Yet the Hallstatt people left no writing of their own. We can trace their trade from the Alps to the Mediterranean, but their names, politics, and true identity remain buried with them. Number 3. The missing bones of Peking Man. Imagine losing one of the most important clues to human history, not in ancient times but during the modern war era. The Peking Man fossils were found in the 1920s at Zhoukoudian, about 30 miles southwest of Beijing. These remains belonged to Homo erectus pekinensis and dated back roughly 750,000 years. Over years of excavation, researchers recovered skull caps, jaws, teeth, limb bones, stone tools, and evidence of fire use from at least 40 individuals. Then, World War II changed everything. As Japanese forces advanced, the fossils were packed into 2 wooden crates and placed under U.S. Marine protection to be shipped to America for safety. But in 1941, the Marines were captured, and the crates vanished. Some believe the fossils were seized by Japanese soldiers. Others say they sank with a ship or were hidden somewhere in Beijing. Casts still exist, but the original bones remain missing, and that loss still haunts science. Number 2. The Dancing Girl of Mohenjo-Daro. Some artifacts feel alive, and the Dancing Girl of Mohenjo-Daro is one of them. Found in 1926 among the ruins of the Indus Valley city, this tiny bronze figure is only about 10.5 centimeters tall, but her presence is huge. She dates to around 2500 BC, when Mohenjo-Daro already had planned streets, drainage systems, standardized weights, and skilled craft traditions. The statue shows a young woman standing with one hand on her hip, the other hanging loose, bangles covering one arm, a necklace at her chest, and a small pigtail over her shoulder. Her pose feels confident, almost modern. She was made through lost wax casting, a technique that required real technical control. But because the Indus script remains undeciphered, no one knows who she represents. A dancer? A real person? A ritual figure? She was found in a house, not a temple, which makes her even more personal. After 4,500 years, she still refuses to explain herself. Number 1. Kings who ruled for millennia. Some ancient records sound less like history and more like something pulled from myth, and the Sumerian king list is exactly that. Compiled around 1800 BC, though based on older traditions, it names the cities and rulers who held power in ancient Mesopotamia. At first, it seems like a political record. Then, suddenly, it reaches the time before the Great Flood. That's where things become strange. The ancient tablet claims that kingship came down from heaven and that early rulers reigned for thousands, even tens of thousands of years. One king of Larak is said to have ruled for 28,800 years. Another from Shuruppak ruled for 18,600. After the flood, kingship begins again, and some later rulers actually match real archaeological evidence from cities like Uruk, Ur, and Kish. So the list is not pure fantasy. It preserves real names and real places. But were those impossible reigns symbolic, political propaganda, or distorted memories of rulers from a forgotten world? Well, that's all from us. Thanks for watching, and be sure to give this video a like and subscribe to our channel. Until then, take care, and we'll see you very soon.